Welcome to The Rest is Politics US with me, Katty K, here in Washington, D.C.
You know, Washington has Katty K. That's a positive. It has cherry blossoms. Mm-hmm. That is also a positive.
Also nice, yes.
But Washington also has politicians, Katty K. And these politicians are causing a lot of damage to the world.
So what are you looking at as we start week 2?
You know, I think it's important to, at least for our viewers and listeners, to lay out what they're trying to do. So far,
I'm glad you know. I'm thrilled that you actually have a clear sense of what they're trying to do.
I don't actually 100% know. And I think that's the irony of the whole thing. We were 10 days into it and nobody from the administration has laid out a vision, no story arc, no idea of what it is that they really wanted to accomplish. I also want to talk to you about what happened in Oman, because it seems like, and the Iranians are leaking this, they gave everything.
Yes. On the diplomatic front.
On the diplomatic front, they gave them every single thing that they wanted. So why wasn't that enough before the kinetic activity happened? And I want people to at least see it from a lens of the diverging and converging interests, right? So where are they diverging? Where are they converging? So let's just stop for a moment and get into Trump's brain. It's almost like Ghostbusters. If you remember the scene where Bill Murray slimed, you're going into the brain, you got to get some orange slime on you. But what does Trump want? He's very transactional and he's very theatrical. So what does Trump want? He wants a big, visible, historic win. Mm-hmm. And so he genuinely believes only he is the only person that could do this, and so on and so forth. And so he wants perpetual tension, and that he wants it to be culminated with a dramatic gesture of him meeting with the political leader of Iran. So his goal was blow everything up, scare the daylights out of these people, make them submit the way the Venezuelans did to the American orthodoxy, if you will, and then have this very grand dramatic gesture. But up against that, Katty, are the Rubio-Waltz-Pompeo faction of the Republican Party, which are their neoconservatives and their hawks, and they want regime change without a ground invasion. Okay, so they want the Islamic Republic to collapse from within. They've said repeatedly on Fox and other places that the regime only has a 15% level of support from its citizens.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're hoping that they can do what Rumsfeld and Cheney wanted
in Iraq.
Yeah, exactly. Full-on revolt, and everyone comes to the way of the Americans. And so this is the naivete of the neoconservative. It's just astonishing. 25 years of trying this stuff, it's never worked. And then let's go to the Netanyahu piece. Netanyahu is basically, in his mind, saying that he wants a permanent elimination of Iranian's nuclear capability. And again, just speaking from Netanyahu's point of view, these guys have called for the destruction and the elimination of his state, and the result of which he is ready and obviously ready to fight them. And he's done a better than good job of convincing Donald Trump. For 4 decades, you couldn't convince any other president to do this. And he's looking at this from, I can decimate Hezbollah, the Hamas, the Houthis, the Iraqi militias that are sponsored by the Iranians.
Yeah.
He's been waiting to do this for 20 years. Okay, so the last piece, Katty, are the Gulf states. They're pissed.
And they've suffered a huge reputational damage as a safe haven, even if this all blows over in a week, right? They're already paying the cost of this, those Gulf states. People are going to think twice about moving to Dubai now.
So they quietly, but I mean, we have to tell people because they're denouncing it now and they're sending open letters to denounce Trump, but they were in quiet support of it.
Yes.
Because they didn't like the state sponsoring of terrorism from the Iranians. They didn't like the constant disruption of economic activity in the area.
No.
So those are the 4 different things going on. And I'm here to tell you, I think every one of those interests are going to lose in this conflict. I'm sorry to say that, by the way, because obviously I want the absolute best outcome for everybody. But Katty, even if you got the quote unquote best outcome, the personal fantasy outcome of Donald Trump, it's still not a great outcome for the U.S.
Look, I think that lots of ways of framing this. I think you could look at the military campaign, the military war, which is going well. They're managing to get the targets they want. I've heard that the Israelis feel that in a couple of days they may have run through their whole target list, in which case the ballistic missiles have been severely downgraded. There's no indication that the Iranians would be able to rebuild their nuclear weapons or nuclear threat within several years. So that's a massive downgrade. There's the political war, which is going much less well. There is no sign of an uprising, which is what Donald Trump had called for when he said that we're here to support you and this is your last best chance, and then it's over to the Iranian people. Well, there is no sign of the Iranian public protesting and being out there on the streets at the moment. And another problem on the political front, they've just nominated another hardliner to run the country. So there's no sign that the reformists are taking over and could be an interlocutor in the short term, at least. And then you've got the economic war, and that's also going pretty badly at the moment, with talk of oil possibly going to $150, maybe even $200 a barrel, along with all of the other knock-on effects of the Straits of Hormuz not working. So I think there are ways in which there is a scenario, and I want to get your reaction to this, Anthony, in which Donald Trump could have said at the beginning of this, look, after all of these decades of aggression from Iran towards American assets, towards countries in the region, all of the destabilizing that Iran has done and the terrorism that Iran has exported, we could not afford to let them have nuclear weapons. We could not afford to let them have ballistic missiles. And the regime is weakened. And this was an opportunity to really cripple the regime, to deprive them of their aggressive military capabilities. I'm sorry, this is going to be a very difficult 2 weeks. You'll see oil prices go up. There will be violence in the region, but hang tight. It will be worth it. I think if Donald Trump had said that at the beginning of this campaign and not got distracted by regime change. This weekend, he said there might be American boots on the ground. This weekend, he said there has to be total surrender. A couple of days ago, he says we have to pick the next leader. If he had not got distracted by broadening his ambitions because he's high on power and thinks he's kind of can play God, then I think actually that is a kind of clear, simple message that he could have sold around the West and potentially sold to the American people as well. But why didn't he do that? Why didn't they make that very limited military objective the objective? And instead, in Donald Trump's brain, while you're up there kind of rootling around, you're finding all of these megalomaniac ambitions and distractions.
I am going to channel him now.
They could have hired me, right? I could have been Caroline Levitt.
Yeah, but hopefully you'll have some kind of exorcism for me after I channel him. But let me channel him. I am all-knowing. Mm-hmm. No one's smarter than me. I'm the only one that can fix this.
Yeah.
And by the way, the rules don't apply to me. So I'm not going to go to the American public and ask them for permission. I'm not going to go to the American public and try to sell them on this. I'm not going to go to the Congress and try to sell them on it. I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to do it with great theatrics because I know best.
And I'm the strongest and I'm tough.
And I'm the strongest. And Hegseth is actually in trouble with Trump. And you'll say, well, why is he in trouble with Trump? He's in trouble with Trump because last night on the plane, Trump said that the Iranians bombed the school.
Yes.
Even though you have Tomahawk missiles sticking out of the ground, the school was hit twice inside of 40 minutes. 2 Tomahawk missiles sticking out of the ground. Iranians don't have Tomahawk missiles. Mm-hmm. And so he said that the Iranians bombed the school. They turned to Secretary Hegseth. Is that true, Secretary Hegseth? We're investigating it. Go take a look at the body language between Trump and Hegseth. I guarantee you he tore his head off when they went back into the plane away from the press.
Well, that's the second cabinet member in a week who has contradicted Donald Trump publicly. And it didn't end very well for Kristi Noem.
And so 168 kids died, 14 teachers died.
Yeah.
On the second strike, Katty, parents died. Parents were rushing to the school to try to get their kids out of the school, and then another missile hit them, and the parents died. So those are civilians. It's an unspeakable tragedy.
But then have the humanity to say it's an unspeakable tragedy, and our hearts go out to all of those families.
No. Well, he blamed it on the Iranians. They're cutting off the heads of babies and all of this other stuff. But Katty, the minimum win is going to be the most likely one. And so just hear me out for a second. Here's the minimum win. To your point about the targets and the destruction, Netanyahu is going to say that he set the nuclear program back 5 to 10 years. He's going to say that the proxy network has been defanged and some elements of it has now been defunded. Okay, he's going to say the conventional military, and this is the stuff that they've been exporting to the Iraqi militias, has also been more or less liquidated. Mm-hmm. And by the way, and this is me being critical of Netanyahu, but I just want to share this, Iran will become a more poor and more isolated country. And the Gulf will probably be like the following, that it will be less of a threat to its Gulf partners.
We could be back there.
Yeah, exactly. So 93 million people, you put them into more poverty. You've hurt their economy. You've hurt
made
their
them
military.
More anti-Western, not less anti-Western.
Okay, so to me, even if you got the best of the best outcomes, these are not great outcomes for the West, and these are not great outcomes for the Americans. But Katty, they are good outcomes for the Israelis. We have to just be honest with people.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a question you've got to be asked in Washington. Is there a co-presidency going on between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump? Because Trump said the other day, when Bibi says it's time to stop, we're basically going to stop the war.
Well, and then the reporting in Washington this morning is that the Americans didn't like the amount of strikes that the Israelis launched against oil facilities in Iran over the course of yesterday, Sunday into Monday, and were taken by surprise by that. There had not been the coordination. Trump doesn't like it because he doesn't want any more destabilization in the oil markets. I had an interesting conversation with a senior intelligence official in Europe, actually. And one of the things they pointed out was that there are two big winners from this war. After your description as Anthony of the school, I don't like to put this in crude political terms in terms of winners and losers, because there are now hundreds of families who have just lost their little girls. But in the geopolitical context, there are some people who are benefiting from this destruction and violence more than others. One of them, as you said, is Benjamin Netanyahu, but the other one who's benefiting is Vladimir Putin at the moment. He was getting $40 a barrel for his oil. He's now getting $80 a barrel. The ordinance that has been spent on Iran is not now going to be, even if the Europeans tried to buy it, it's going to be harder for them to buy it, for the Ukrainians to defend themselves against the Russians. So the second and third consequences of this are beneficial to Russia at the moment. I mean, they're doing very little. Everyone in Washington is in a froth about the reporting that the Russians are giving intelligence to the Iranians to attack Americans. I'm told that that's not really a very big deal. The Iranians don't have much capacity to act on that intelligence anyway. And the kind of intelligence they're getting is not particularly helpful. But it's certainly the case that this is not bad news for Vladimir Putin. So you've got Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu, who are doing well out of this. What about the American public? How is the American public doing out of this, Anthony?
Well, I think the American public doesn't like it. It's polling very poorly. Trump is polling very poorly on this issue. Usually when you have a call to war, the president gets a bump. When people rally around the president and they say, okay, we got to rally around. But he didn't explain it to anybody. And so he doesn't have the bump. The do-nothing Congress, it hasn't been effective of stopping the president. I think this war powers vote they'll try to use during the midterm elections because it's split down the middle. But I wrote down last night a couple of things, and I'd like you to react to them because I'm trying to channel. I know the personalities. I know Rubio for 15 years. I don't know Vance that well, though I've met him a few times. Trump I know well. I'm trying to channel the personality. Hegseth I worked with at Fox News. Mm-hmm. What would keep them up at night? Now, the first thing that makes me say, maybe nothing. Maybe they're that stupid where nothing is keeping them up at night. Because Hegseth said some ridiculous things on 60 Minutes last night about, almost like genocidal. He was talking about the Iranians. And nothing keeps me up at night. I keep them up at night. He was trying to channel Jim Mattis. But here are things that would keep me up at night. Okay? Iranian nationalism is real and it's deep and it's ancestral, Katty. And if you go back to 1953, when MI6 and the CIA replaced their democratically elected leader with the Shah, okay, that's still the original wound. And so you have a martyr trap. Second thing that here is you may have a population that hates the mullahs, but they may hate American and Israeli bombers more.
After this, you mean?
Yeah, after this. Yes, it's just something to think about, okay? And then the second thing for me is what they said last night. Okay, the foreign minister, and I said it to you earlier this morning, the foreign minister said, hey, we don't care. We have a terrible economy. You've cut us off from the rest of the world. Our goal is to send oil prices to $150 to $200 a barrel. Good luck. Good luck with your Western economies at those prices, okay? And so that lands directly into the wheelhouse right now in America because the Americans were the MAGA people. Again, Marjorie Taylor Greene, we elected you to end forever wars, to help us with Joe Biden's inflation. Would have happened anyway, but you know the narrative. And so if I'm them, I'm super worried about these things. I'm also super worried about the relative silence of China. We both know that they've got intelligence boats in the area. We both know that they're helping the Iranians. They're doing it very quietly, however. But it just feels like to me that the Russians and the Chinese are going to help insulate the Iranian economy when this is over, because it's in their best interest to do that. And they don't need to do it the way a Donald Trump would do it with bombast. They're going to do it in the undercurrent of the geopolitics of it.
That is true. The striking silence from China, the fact that the Chinese are now banning exports of refined oil, even though they're sitting on a lot of it themselves. The Chinese feel like they're in a strong position at the moment. They can wait out what is happening. They have the supplies of oil to wait out what is happening, and they don't want Iran crippled in the long run. And there is now a growing kind of global South coalition of which China, India, and Russia are kind of a part, where they oppose this sort of adventurism on the part of the United States. The way that this is panning out inside Iran, to your point about, do you create a population that is more anti-American? I spoke to a friend of mine who's an Iranian exile this weekend, and they had been actually, about a week ago, they had suggested to me that, they were kind of excited about the prospect of what might happen. They were nervous, but they were excited about the prospect of what might happen. And now they're super depressed. Now they see that Donald Trump is not going to follow this through, having launched these strikes which have hit the Iranian public. And remember, there's 90% of the internet is still out, so the opposition can't mobilize even if it wanted to. There's no way for them to communicate around the country. Iranians who are living out of the country are having problems getting in contact with people who are in the country. I think this is a risk of flipping from having been quite supportive of the idea, because there is so little support for the regime, of regime change, because I've lived in countries with Sharia law. It is an awful way to live, and there are a lot of Iranians who hated it. I have a lot of sympathy for that proposition that they wanted to get rid of the Ayatollah, and there was celebrations when the Ayatollah was killed. But now you get crickets from the Iranian opposition, and Iranians in exile are feeling already disillusioned because they see that patience is going to run out. They see the oil prices. They see that actually there was not the planning that there needed to be for the consequences of this. I mean, why? This is what worries me about what we've seen over the last week, Anthony, is there's an incompetence factor here. You strike the Gulf and you think that it's not going to impact oil prices. Why aren't you already having the discussion about the strategic oil reserves or having the discussion about the gas tax? You don't plan for bringing your expats home. I'm hearing of people who have 2 passports who are being brought home by the Luxembourg government, not by the American government. So then you think, well, if that wasn't planned for, what else didn't they plan for? How confident are we feeling? Yes, we're hearing that the military strikes are going incredibly well, but what else didn't they plan for?
Let me tell you what I know, and let me tell you how these guys think. So what happened here is Netanyahu's putting huge pressure on him.
And Lindsey Graham, I'm told.
Lindsey Graham, and they meet the day after Christmas, pounding Trump. We got to launch missiles. I'm going to do it. You got to do it with me. all the stuff that he threatened Obama with, that Jake Sullivan's talking about.
What, Donald Trump is not able to say no to Bibi Netanyahu? Since when can America not say no to the Israelis?
Well, okay, so that's one element of it, but I want you to hear the pitch, because this is what they do to Trump. The guy Bill Pulte walks in, he shows a picture of Donald Trump and FDR, and he says, FDR invented the 30-year mortgage, and look at you, you're going to invent the 50-year mortgage. Trump gets super excited and he immediately puts out on Truth Social, we're going to have a 50-year mortgage. Of course, that's like indentured servitude, so it dies on the vine. But they pitch him a few weeks back and they say, listen, the 6-Day War was a monumental cornerstone of Israeli history, because the 6-Day War, they pushed back the Egyptians, they obliterated them, they took the Sinai Peninsula, and they forced secularism in Egypt. They got Sadat in charge and forced secularism. 11 short years later, you got the Camp David Accords with Jimmy Carter, and you had peace and stability in the region between those two adversaries. And so the 6-Day War is the model here. We're going to hit them super hard. 85% of the people hate the regime. In the 12-Day War last year, they didn't do anything. They just said, hey, hello, we're going to hit these targets, get your troops out of the way. And so Trump is sitting there because he's impetuous, and Trump is sitting there because he's theatrical. This is the pitch.
And only you can do it. All of your predecessors have been too weak.
So I just want people to understand what they do to Trump, right? So they go in there with the 6-Day War pitch.
It's a form of flattery.
Yeah, but they also compare it to Egypt. And they say, well, you're going to have your own 6 or 12-day war. You're going to decapitate the regime. You're going to put a secularist in there. And then, like you did with the North Koreans, you're going to fly over there and you're going to have this only you can do it deal. So that's what they did to him. And I want people to know that. So number one, they're sitting there listening, saying, okay, that's effing crazy. And then the other thing they're saying is, okay, that's also probably true, given everything that we know about the situation.
The trouble is that we don't have the person to do the deal with. And as you said at the beginning of this, basically they are counting on the idea that the Iranians are like him and will do some kind of a transactional deal for money, and they'll want to get it done. But now we've got this new Ayatollah Murtaba in, although there are reports that he has $100 million in property assets around the world. So maybe he will do the deal, but he's also clearly a hardliner. I don't think these are the people that Donald Trump thought after 10 days he was still going to have to be negotiating with. I think he thought this would be quicker than this, and that the public would rise up, because he's seen the polls and he's seen the dissatisfaction. He's seen the uprisings in January, but this is a battered, abused population. And right now, they are not in a mood to rise up if they don't think that the Americans are actually going to be there to support them, which, looking at the oil markets, they may well not be.
Yeah, they don't have the arms.
And you bomb a school, it's going to make, and then you deny that you bombed it, and you don't express remorse and apology. I don't think that's going to help the American cause in terms when they come to try to negotiate. I think that side of the strategy has gone wrong. He may still be able to declare victory along the lines of the narrow operations that some of the military people are laying out. He may decide he's done in a week. The economic cost is too high. He's going to declare victory anyway, and he may get away with it. And then we move on, and there isn't a big knock-on effect in the midterm elections in terms of the economy.
I just want to say 3 quick things about the new leader.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read you a quote. Okay, Motaba is widely viewed within the regime as a capable and forceful leader and manager who may someday succeed to at least share national leadership. Okay, that is U.S. Embassy cable picked up by WikiLeaks, and that's a U.S. Embassy cable from 2008. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the father did not want him in this position. He tapped his father's phone. There was a rivalry, and there was some anxiety between the son and the father. Okay, a little bit of patricide going there. And he was not pleased with the idea of his son's leadership. And he didn't want the idea of him being raised to supreme leader ever raised during his lifetime. Okay. And I just want to read you this one last thing, because I did some homework on this last night. In addition to having all this money and he has a flat in London, he's a hardliner.
He's an IRGC apparatchik.
He is. And he was also, when he was in the Iranian-Iraqi war, as a younger man, he was in the most ideological part of this. Okay, so when you are looking at this, okay, and Ali Hassam, who's a pretty competent Al Jazeera correspondent, says that this guy is a confrontational leader and we're not expecting any moderation. Now, Trump called him a lightweight, and Trump did his flex. He's not going to last if he doesn't listen to me and take orders from me. Do you think this guy's going to take orders from Donald Trump, Katty?
This is not Delcy Rodriguez. I mean, this is not the person they thought they were hoping for. This is not Deng Xiaoping. This is not Gorbachev.
These are people that have been raised in martyrdom. These are people that see the Americans as imperialists. These are people that see the Americans as interventionalists in their 5,000-year-old civilization. And there's something ancestral here that everybody should be aware of.